Did God regret creating humans? It's a question that shakes the foundations of faith, stirring emotions of awe and unease. In the book of Genesis, we are given a startling glimpse into a moment when the creator of the universe expressed sorrow over humanity's existence. Why would an all-knowing, all-powerful God feel regret? What could drive the creator to lament the very beings he made in his image? The story unfolds in Genesis 6, a chapter often overshadowed by the dramatic events of the flood. It begins with a world spiraling into chaos. Humanity, once described as very good in the Garden of Eden, had descended into corruption and violence. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. These words paint a grim picture, a world consumed by moral decay, where humanity's actions defied their divine purpose. Then comes one of the Bible's most haunting verses. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. The weight of this statement is almost unbearable. How can a perfect God experience regret? Did he make a mistake? Or is this verse revealing something deeper, something that challenges our understanding of divine nature? To unravel this mystery, we must first understand the Hebrew word used for regret in this passage, nachem. This word carries a range of meanings, from sorrow and grief to repentance and change of mind. But can God, who is unchanging and omniscient, truly repent or change his mind? Theologians have debated this for centuries, offering various interpretations. Some see it as anthropomorphic language, human emotions ascribed to God to help us understand his actions. Others view it as a profound statement about God's relationship with humanity, a relationship marked by love, sorrow, and divine patience. This moment of divine regret is not isolated. The Bible repeatedly shows us a God who engages with humanity in deeply personal ways. From his conversations with Adam and Eve in the garden to his covenant with Noah after the flood, God's actions reveal a creator who is deeply invested in his creation. But Genesis 6 is different. It's raw, emotional, and unsettling. What does this passage tell us about the nature of God? Is his regret a sign of weakness, or is it evidence of his boundless compassion? As we delve deeper into this story, we are confronted with questions that strike at the heart of our faith. What does it mean to be human? Why did God create us if he knew we would fail? And most importantly, what does this moment of regret reveal about his plan for humanity? The answers may surprise you, challenging everything you thought you knew about the relationship between creator and creation. As Genesis 6 unfolds, the depth of humanity's corruption comes into focus. This isn't just a story about bad decisions or occasional sins. It's a picture of a world utterly consumed by wickedness. The text says, "Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." These are not the words of hyperbole. They describe a humanity that has abandoned its purpose, choosing violence, greed, and rebellion over the goodness they were created for. But what was the breaking point? Why did the Creator, who formed humanity in his own image, reach a moment of sorrow so profound that it grieved his heart? Scholars often point to the mysterious opening verses of Genesis 6, which speak of the sons of God marrying the daughters of men and producing the Nephilim, described as giants or mighty warriors. This enigmatic passage has fueled centuries of debate. Were these sons of God fallen angels, celestial beings who defied God's order? Or were they human rulers whose unchecked power led to widespread corruption? Whatever the explanation, the result was catastrophic. The boundaries God had established for creation were shattered. The Nephilim became symbols of unchecked human ambition, violence, and disregard for divine authority. Their presence on earth marked a tipping point, where humanity's rebellion reached such heights that it threatened to unravel the very fabric of creation. This wasn't just a moral crisis, it was a cosmic one. In response, the text reveals God's sorrow. the Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. Here, we are confronted with a startling image of God. This isn't a distant, detached deity. This is a creator whose heart aches for the world he lovingly brought into existence. But this moment raises profound questions. If God knew humanity would descend into chaos, why create them at all? Was the pain of seeing humanity's failure part of a larger purpose? To understand this, we must consider the nature of free will. Humanity was created with the ability to choose, a gift that reflects the image of God within us. But that freedom also comes with consequences. The world described in Genesis chapter 6 is what happens when humanity chooses to reject God's ways. It's a sobering reminder that free will is both a gift and a responsibility. And yet, even in his grief, God doesn't abandon his creation. The narrative takes a pivotal turn with the introduction of Noah. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. In a world drowning in corruption, Noah stands as a beacon of hope. He is described as a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, who walked faithfully with God. This moment offers a glimpse of redemption, a reminder that even in humanity's darkest hour, God's plan for restoration remains. But this raises another question. Why Noah? Was he chosen because of his righteousness, or was it an act of divine grace? Could it be that Noah's faithfulness was part of God's larger plan to preserve humanity and begin anew? These questions bring us closer to understanding the heart of the story. A story not just about judgment, but about love, justice, and hope. As the flood looms on the horizon, we are left with a moment of tension. What does God's decision to act, both in judgment and in mercy, reveal about his character? Is this the end of humanity's story, or is it the beginning of something greater? The world of Genesis 6 had reached a breaking point. Humanity's corruption was total, and the ripple effects of sin spread across all creation. Yet, in the midst of this darkness, God's response wasn't a simple act of destruction. It was a profound balance of judgment and mercy. What does the flood reveal about the heart of God? Was this an act of wrath or something much deeper? God's decision to bring the flood wasn't a snap reaction. It was a deliberate act in response to the overwhelming wickedness of humanity. "I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created," he declares, a statement that feels devastating in its finality. Yet, even as these words echo through the text, we see another side of God, a God who chooses to preserve life through Noah. This duality of judgment and mercy challenges us to look beyond surface interpretations. Was the flood purely an act of divine anger, or was it a means to reset creation, to restore the goodness that had been lost? Noah becomes the central figure in this narrative of renewal. Described as blameless among the people of his time, Noah is not perfect, but he is faithful. He listens to God's command, building the ark in obedience despite the ridicule and disbelief of those around him. The ark itself becomes a symbol of hope and salvation, a vessel through which God will preserve life. But why did God choose Noah? Was his righteousness the reason, or was it part of a greater divine plan? The floodwaters that come to cleanse the earth are not just a judgment against sin, they represent a fresh start. The destruction is total, but it's not the end. The waters recede, and life begins anew. This moment of renewal mirrors the creation story in Genesis 1, with the earth emerging from chaos and order being restored. But this time, the world is forever changed. Humanity's relationship with God will now be shaped by the covenant he establishes with Noah, a promise that despite humanity's failings, God will never again destroy the earth by flood. As the ark settles on dry ground, God makes a profound declaration. "I establish my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature." The rainbow becomes the symbol of this promise, a sign of God's faithfulness and commitment to his creation. But this covenant also raises questions. If humanity's wickedness remains, what will prevent another descent into chaos? How will God's plan for redemption unfold in a world still marked by sin? The flood narrative forces us to wrestle with complex emotions. On one hand, it's a story of devastating judgment, a world wiped clean of its corruption. On the other, it's a story of unimaginable mercy, a creator who chooses to preserve life and offer humanity a second chance. This tension between justice and grace lies at the heart of the story, challenging us to reflect on the nature of God and his relationship with humanity. But the story doesn't end with the flood. As humanity begins anew, the question of free will and moral responsibility lingers. Did the flood change humanity's nature, or is the struggle between good and evil an inescapable part of the human condition? And what does God's covenant with Noah reveal about his ultimate plan for humanity's redemption? The flood was not the final answer to humanity's failings. It was a step in a much larger story, a story that points toward hope, restoration, and a deeper understanding of God's character. But as the floodwaters recede, we are left with a profound question. If God regretted creating humans once, could it happen again? As the floodwaters recede and Noah steps onto dry ground, humanity enters a new chapter. The rainbow in the sky stands as a testament to God's promise, a covenant not just with Noah, but with all creation. But this moment of renewal also leaves us with profound questions. If humanity's nature remained flawed, what was the ultimate purpose of the flood? Did it truly change anything, or was it just the beginning of a greater plan for redemption? The flood was a reset, but it was not a cure. The human heart, described earlier as only evil all the time, did not change overnight. This is evident as the generations following Noah repeat the same patterns of pride and rebellion. The story of the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11 illustrates this vividly. Humanity once again strives to assert its own power and independence from God. The flood may have wiped the slate clean, but the deeper issue of sin remained unresolved. Yet, in the midst of this repeated failure, we see a different side of God. The covenant with Noah marks a shift in his relationship with humanity. Instead of responding to sin with destruction, God chooses to work through it, setting in motion a plan that would ultimately lead to restoration. The promise of the rainbow is not just about withholding judgment. It's about a creator who refuses to give up on his creation. This covenant points forward to another promise, a promise that would be fulfilled centuries later through Jesus Christ. In the New Testament, we see the ultimate answer to humanity's sin and God's regret. Through Jesus, God provides a way for humanity to be redeemed, not through destruction, but through grace. The flood was a temporary solution, but Jesus represents the eternal hope of reconciliation. Could it be that the regret expressed in Genesis 6 was not about humanity's creation, but about the pain of watching humanity suffer under the weight of its own choices? This brings us back to the question at the heart of this story. Did God regret creating humans? Genesis chapter 6 gives us a glimpse of a God who feels deeply, who grieves over the brokenness of his creation. But that grief is not a sign of weakness. It's a testament to his love, a love so profound that, despite humanity's failures, God chooses to pursue us. The flood was not the end of the story. It was a chapter in a much larger narrative, a narrative that points toward redemption and restoration. The story of Genesis 6 challenges us to rethink how we view God's character. He is not a distant, emotionless deity, but a creator deeply invested in his creation. His regret is not about making a mistake, it's about the cost of giving humanity free will. It's about the pain of watching his children choose paths that lead to destruction, even as he offers them a way back to him. For us, this story is more than ancient history. It's a reflection of our own lives. Like the people of Noah's time, we live in a world marked by brokenness and sin. But the covenant with Noah, and ultimately the cross, reminds us that God's love is unchanging. Even when we fall short, even when we repeat the mistakes of the past, his promise remains to never abandon his creation. As we look back on the flood, we see not just a story of judgment, but a story of hope, a story that reminds us of the depth of God's love and his unwavering commitment to humanity. The flood wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a journey toward redemption. And that journey continues today, offering each of us a chance to step into the covenant of grace that God has extended to all. So, did God regret creating humans? The answer lies not in his regret, but in his response. A response marked by love, patience, and a promise that no matter how far we fall, he will never stop reaching out to bring us back to him. That's the deeper story of Genesis, a story of redemption beyond regret.